and today we're talking about Hack-a-shaq, probably the most controversial and highly criticized tactic used in all of basketball. So much so that the NBA has been arguing for decades whether they should put more rules and regulations on it or just ban the use of the strategy altogether. I, for one, I'm a big fan of Hack-a-shaq. For those of you out there who are already basketball savvy, you know about the tactic and you either love it or you hate it. There really is no middle ground. If you've never heard of it, that's okay too. Hack-a-shaq is a strategy where you intentionally foul the worst shooter on the opposing team whether or not they have the ball and force them to shoot 2 free throws. Now, why would a team want to give their opponent 2 wide open shots at the basket as opposed to simply playing stellar defense and maybe getting a turnover? Well, believe it or not, there can be some benefits to the Hack-a-shaq technique. But you have to remember that this technique is a gamble. And the only times you are likely to see this tactic is by teams that are losing and when the game is almost over. The idea is that 1, you almost always get the ball back. 2, you waste no time in playing defense and can focus what little time and effort you do have left into catching up. 3, hopefully the worst shooter doesn't make his 2 shots, and then you don't have to worry about catching up any further. But like I said, you are gambling here. And just in Vegas, the house almost always wins. Since the creation of Hack-a-shaq, there have only been a handful of times that it has actually helped a team win. But that still hasn't discouraged teams from using it against notoriously poor shooters like Shaquille O'Neal or the Superman Dwight Howard, weird Dennis Rodman, or even as far back to the great Wilt Chamberlain. The question you need to ask yourself then is this: if the Hack-a-shaq strategy rarely ever works, then why is it so controversial? Why would anyone have a problem with a strategy that is statistically ineffective? Well, you guessed it, money. When teams use this tactic, it slows down the game so that there's not really any flash, and frankly, it gets a little boring to watch. People really don't want to sit down and watch the worst shooter on their team miss shot after shot, brick after brick. Back in the 50s and 60s, when Wilt Chamberlain was playing, it's even a little comical because the worst shooter would always be playing hide and seek from the other team simply to avoid a foul. Since then, some restrictions have been placed on its use, but all in all, it's a strategy you can't get rid of. Free throw shooting has always been and will always be a fundamental part of any basketball game. If your team has a player that can't shoot them very well, then that's their problem, and we should be free to use any advantage we can to win games. It's almost as ridiculous as getting rid of the 3-point shot simply because some guys can't make them. If you don't want that tactic used against you, then simply use those millions of dollars you earn every year and become a better shooter. Other than fair weather fans and people who really don't know much about the game, the only people really opposed to the use of this Hack-a-shaq tactic are, of course, players who hate having the terrible shooting publicly displayed. And of course, coaches who have players like that. It really is a love-hate strategy though, because you love to be able to use it in critical game situations, but hate when it can be used against you. What it really comes down to is this: if you watch basketball to see tall, athletic guys run around while throwing a comparatively tiny ball through a hoop, then I know for a fact you will never be a fan of the Hack-a-shaq strategy. However, for the real fans and players out there, we want to win. And if our opponent has a chink in their armor, you're damn right we'll exploit it. Thank you.